All right, and we've tracked just a little bit over, so we'll make up some time. There we go. Let me introduce to you Phil Fitzgerald from Toray Carbon Fibers, longtime friend of the Synergist family, and been at Adept Experience the past 3 years. And Phil, I'll let you take the rest of us home.
Martha called me about 3 or 4 weeks ago and asked me if I would do a presentation. Of course, I thought, why me, of all people in the world? But then I said, I just didn't want to go first. Because I said, well, in my mind, if you don't want to, then I thought, well, I'll do second. But I wasn't thinking about what time second's going to talk, because usually seconds is before lunch. So you all are very anxious to go to lunch, but I didn't want to go third, because when's third? After lunch. So you don't want to go after lunch either. And then I thought this morning, how do you follow up Chris Wood and Dow? So I'm a sacrificial lamb today. How's that? No. But I have been using Adept since 2006, so it's a long time ago. But the thing that came to my mind when Martha was asking me what to speak was, well, what's my Adept experience? You know, the whole other thing is the Adept experience, but what has mine been with the company that I work with? So that's what I'm going to break it down to and show you how we started out, why we selected Adept, and the process of how we brought it into our company. So that's the slideshow that we're going to talk about. And I'm not sure which button to hit all of a sudden. Is it that one? Yes. I'm kind of like Mr. Wood. You don't really like to talk about yourself, but sometimes it helps to give information about where you come from and how much you know and how much technical that you have. So I have over 40 years in CAD experience, and it's funny, in the CAD world, most people, if you were born after 84, you only think of one word, and it's Autodesk, you know. But there were a lot of different CAD systems back in the day, so I started out, after I got out of the military, I started out at Tennessee Valley Authority, and we had a company, we used software called Computer Vision. So I was talking to some gentlemen last night that actually heard of Computer Vision. We also had Autotrol, and then after that, I actually, when Autodesk came out in 1984, I thought, man, I know a ton about CAD, know a lot about engineering and drafting, so I thought, I started my own company in New Orleans called Universal Data Consultants. Did that for 3 years. It's hard. How many of you have you owned your own company before? You know, you got to pay everybody else first, so I got tired of doing that. And it was a company called Intergraph that was a pretty big company back in the late 80s, early 90s. And they needed a field service technician in New Orleans. And I had been in the Air Force, loved electronics, worked on computers, and I thought, man, I'm the perfect job for me. Sent my resume up there. They flew me up for an interview, and I interviewed for that job. They said, you know what? We want to interview for something else. And I said, well, sure, I'm up here, why not? And they took me over to a little section called MicroStation. We got some MicroStation users here. I have to admit, I'd heard of Intergraph, but I'd never heard of MicroStation. So what did I do? And they actually offered me a job because I knew so much about AutoCAD and Autodesk. They wanted me to train resellers how to sell the product out of the box. And out of the box, they let me play with it for 4 weeks. And come lo and behold, and out of the box, I thought, and I still do believe, MicroStation was a much better product out of the box because you had everything in it. You didn't have to piecemeal it. So that's how I got to Intergraph. And eventually, I went to Bentley a little bit, reseller training there. Got a family, and at that point, I started traveling everywhere with Bentley, and I finally had to say, enough's enough, so I went back in the engineering world, and I became a company with Toray. Anybody in here heard of Toray? Wow, a couple of people. Toray is, let's see if I can get you here. Toray is actually a global company, and one reason I like for it, we are so diversified in so many different products. As you can see, that's all our different locations. We're in 26 countries. We have 45,000 employees overall. So the biggest thing that Toray that we're noted for right this minute, how many people know Boeing? Just about everybody. Has anybody in this room flown on a 787 yet? Anybody? A couple of people. Well, 787 is the latest aircraft that Boeing has put out, and we have a contract for 12 years to produce carbon fiber for this aircraft. It takes about 30 tons per aircraft. They've sold over 1,200. We've only made 230 something, so we have a long time to get through the carbon fiber world. Just to let you know, we're called Composite Materials America. The company that I'm with in Decatur, Alabama is where we're located. It was built in 1997, and we started out, I was the 80th employee, and now we have over 300 that we produce the carbon fiber. What I wanted to show here, and it didn't turn out like it looked on the screen for some reason, but in red, when I came to the company, we had red, so it was called CFA1, and then while I was there, I got sucked into the construction side of the business for 3 years, and that was CFA2 and CFA3, which is your blue and green, and then finally, we made 2 more lines, so we make a lot of carbon fiber. And this is the plant in Decatur. We also have our main plant in Japan, of course. We have a company, another plant in France that does Airbus. So we kind of have the big 2, either side that you want to look on, which is great. But that is our biggest thing. And we have some pictures here of different things. We can make it. This is what carbon fiber looks like when it comes out of the line. So when you get it, we can weave it, we can chop it, we can do a whole lot of different things to it. We're in a lot of different companies. Here's the 770. Boeing, we do a lot of work with, and you can see some of the, obviously, the information that we have there. Here's the carbon fiber. It's the first one that was, this is over 80% of carbon fiber. So that's why we're into that market. And again, it saves on the fuel costs. You can fly a lot further for destination flights. We're heavily in the defense world. You know, in aerospace, how many know SpaceX? Great company. They've done a lot of stuff. They're the first company, just to let you know, that ever landed the first stage of a rocket back on Earth, which is very interesting. They've done it at least 9 times. They use our carbon fiber. They also do 3D printing with our chopped fiber. So again, great company to be able to do that with. We're in all kind of mobile devices, wind generation, a lot of that, pressure vessels. Anybody that fishes, rides bicycles, plays golf, plays tennis, hockey, they're in our product. So that's just a little different of what Toray as a company, what we do for that. So back to why we're actually all here. Again, I just wanted to talk about the Adept experience that I had. I was given the job in 2006 to select a document management system. So I had to have a decision made in less than a month. So I did some real quick research, and my choice was we were AutoCAD users to either use the Vault or the Adept documentation. So I requested from Miss Janet Keyhart that I wanted to find some people in the area that I could actually go see a presentation for Adept. And I did make a request from her, and she did grant it, that nobody from Synergist would be there. I could actually talk to a real customer that used the software, and she did grant me that. So I went over to Tupelo, Mississippi. Anyone know what Tupelo, Mississippi is famous for? Elvis Presley. And that as well. But they're also famous for Daybright, and they make the large lamps that are in the, trying to think of in the businesses that are in your warehouses. But when I went over there, they scheduled a meeting. I went over. I met a young lady. Her first name was Nikki. And while I was there, she took me over to the engineering department because that's all I was interested in. And I met with her for an hour and a half, and she showed me all the information, how they did that. And I was very impressed. And then she said, well, do you want to go to the documentation control? And I said, well, why not? Yeah, I'm here. So she took me to that, how they use it, how they extract the drawings from their CAD systems and made documentation. Then she took me to shipping, receiving. And then she took me to HR. So even though I wanted to see this little piece of what Adept did, she showed me and opened my eyes to say, well, gosh, I only wanted to use this, but you know what? In every company that we have, we could use it throughout the companies. So I was very impressed with that. So that's that is the main reason that we had selected Adept as the choice that we did. Now, we selected it. Even though we buy a document management system, the question is, well, how do you manage the documents? You know, if you're doing this, so you have a how and a where to start, because you're kind of overwhelmed the first time you ever get into this, even if you're, I can't imagine Dow how overwhelmed you were for that. But for us, we were still overwhelmed, even though we are a small, and I think, again, when Martha asked me, I said, why would she want me to speak for our company? I think we're an average, typical company. You know what I'm saying? That we're not a huge company, but how do you get that into whether you're small or a large company? So what we did is I attended, and it's kind of interesting, so this is my 12-year anniversary. So on the week of October 9th through 13th, I actually found my book that I took notes. That's how I know all the dates, because I wrote them all in here as I was having administration training. So that week I did that, and then we had to get up and running pretty fast. So we chose to do the pilot program. And I know Chris helped us there, a couple other people. We had 16 hours of time, but we used it in increments of 2 hours or 4 hours. So within that 16 hours, which was less than 2 weeks, we were up and running. So that was very fast. So that's how we actually got started in it. And it's like you have the existing documentation or your legacy. Well, we had a ton of flat files. We just took a picture of the one, you know. And then when you look in our documentation room, you know, we had probably 30 to 50,000 documents. So how do you get your legacy data that's not CAD data? So at the same time, again, I got sucked back into the construction world. So we hired an intern. This is what our documents look like. Pretty high quality, right? So, but we scanned them in. So we actually hired an intern for the next 2 years while I was off doing construction management, scanning documents in. That's all we did, and putting a little bit of information with it. We did have CAD files at the time, but I thought it was more important to go ahead and get our legacy data in. So during that 2 years, every once in a while I would bring in, and we would set up our CAD files that we had, and we set up some library cards, and we extracted the data from there. So the first two groups that we had, we actually created a white paper also for Synergist. We did not have per se, a plant engineering group inside this company, because again, it was so small for our one site. But we did have, and the biggest users were even though we're one plant, we have a carb end of the plant and the spinning end of the plant that makes the raw fiber, and the carbonation, I'm trying to talk fast because of the time, I'll try to slow down, but the carbonization end of the plant, they actually take the raw fiber, send it through some oxidation processes, which actually is a chemical process that makes the carbon fiber and bonds the carbon fiber atoms together. So our biggest thing was, if you're in a plant, we run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, we always want to have the system being up, all the pumps, the fans, everything. So if a pump goes out or something breaks down, we've got to get that back up and running as fast as we can. So from the maintenance department side, we would provide what drawings that they needed, electrical wiring diagrams, spec sheets. So when you do a search, the thing that we created was not only do you only pull up just the wiring diagram, but anything associated with that pump, it would bring every bit of that information up, and it would bring it fast, so they had it at their fingertips. So that is why when the first sides we did is we wanted to bring in the carbonization side and the spinning side for maintenance. The biggest drawings that we have to have responsibility for were the plant P&IDs, which are piping and instrumentation diagrams for people that don't know what that stands for, but equipment information and specifications. And this is the very first data card that I created, and you've got a lot of different information. I created a video, so hope it comes across. We'll see if, hopefully this will start. You can see on there, it's hard to read it, but under document types, I only had 80 to 100 different document types for them to search by. And then we had the plant location, we had 6 different plant locations, so if they wanted it for, say, the CFA1 line, you would hit CFA1 and P&ID or whatever, and it would bring that type of documentation form to bring it up in the search, is what you're seeing there. So when I did this, we had a lot of document types that we had created. So you can see it would take a bunch of clicks to get to any type of document you wanted, first going through the document type and then selecting which area of the plant you wanted to go in. This is an example of a single line. So in the next slide, let's see if we're successful here. I had the same type of document, but you're going to, the library card to start out with, but across the top on the data card, you can have 8 different sections in your data card. So what I did across the top is I created some different ones, and again, it's hard for you to see back there, but part of it is talking about some electrical, talks about P&IDs, different things that are in it. So now when you select, see if we're lucky to start this again. Is it going? So what you can see now, you didn't see, I didn't stop it, but what I did is instead of having to do a document type, I started creating libraries across the top, and it would list out the P&IDs for CA1, CA2. So you only had to have one click that would bring up each one of those documents or sections of documents that you wanted. So it made it a lot more efficient because everybody didn't want to use it when you had to do so many sections and so many buttons. So by streamlining the data card, did it stop? No. Well, it's okay. But you kind of get the gist here. Here's where we actually went to a different section. Like it went to some wiring diagrams. So by hitting the different areas, it's much more efficient and a whole lot faster. So it made people want to use it a lot more because they could, and again, I made it so you didn't have to know a drawing number. You just needed to know what it was for when you started seeing that information, especially for the P&IDs. I can't show P&IDs because it's kind of top secret in the world. So, but you can see now, this is for your MCCs and your electrical. This is bringing up your plant single line. So it's just really short and really fast to get you there through the library, data card system. And that's what I wanted to show there. And if you have any questions about that, we can talk about a little more in depth. But the whole thing is, when you have your users, you want them to be able to find and locate information very fast. Because if they don't have confidence in the system and they're not going to use it anymore. So it's very important that for the data cards. Also what we put out for in the maintenance, does everybody know what lockout, tagout is in the plant environment? It's a very important feature because when you're working on a piece of equipment, what do you got to turn off? You got to turn off the electricity. So that's what lockout, tagout does. So on our library card, you can see the example here of where we have information. It has the location, and this part, the first 3 lines, or your title block, that's automatically from your attributes that fill out the library card. It gives you the drawing number, but it also gives you the document type. It's an MCC, so it's electrical. Then it tells you what it is, what it's for the piece of equipment. It was C1516, but one of the most important parts is where it's fed by. So even searching on a library card, they can tell in this case it was fed out of a particular MCC. E2-F was the location. So without even bringing up any kind of a drawing, they could tell you what the lockout tagout point was going to be. So it's very fast, very efficient. And the people in the maintenance department, once we showed them how much information could be on that card and how the searching capability was fast, they wanted to be on the system. And that's part of, again, for a system administrator, you want to have your people to use it, have confidence in it, that you know it's going to work. The next group of people were our technical engineering group and our process engineering group. They wanted the same information, but from an engineering standpoint of how do you get the information, but they're interested more in the specifications and the information that was out. So again, we brought their information in, used the data card for the search area, and it was much more efficient on that one there. So we first 2 groups were carb maintenance spinning, and this was a couple of years later. We brought in our process engineering group and our technical engineering group. So again, we're kind of moving along and moving forward as we introduce people to it. And in 2010, I actually introduced it to every manager that we had in the company. And one of the managers that came to me was the quality manager. And she came to me and said, well, do you think you all could do document management for this? And I don't think there's nothing it can't do personally. So we took her information, and through Synergist, we brought down a technical person that helped us for 1 week set up all the templates and everything that we used for the quality side of the house. So we brought them on board, and this is just a few of the documents that we have, and you can see in our pull down up there, we've got procedures, we have quality documents, we have technical, there were like 9 or 10 different documents that they put in that we had to have in there that were very critical. And once you cross into the aerospace engineer, one of the big features we liked, we get audited 3 times a year for quality documentation that's on it, because again, when you cross over into aerospace, whole different world than it is just for engineering, and a lot of information you have to do. So you can see we had our quality document, but when the auditors come, they want to check what is the latest document. So you have your revision, and you have the people that are out in the production areas. If an auditor would come, they'd say, I want to see you pull up a document for your process and your procedures. Well, in the old days, they had paper copies, so guess what? They could have one in their desk drawer that's Rev 1, and all of a sudden, when the auditor would bring up the document in Adept, it would be Rev 4. Well, who is in trouble? You know, we are, because the people that are looking at the procedures are not using the latest and greatest procedure, and you know, you could get fined for doing that. So once we brought the Adept system in, they didn't even have to print the document out if they didn't want to, because they could search for it, and you know what? The Rev document would actually meet the statement that was on the form itself. So the first time the auditor came and he saw that, it was probably half the time that they would normally be there, because they could open the document, they could see it, and the verification process was just so smooth. So that was a wonderful thing that we actually did for the people in quality and the manager for quality. You know, and it took us about a year to get all that together, but once we had it, like I said, when the auditors come now, they don't mind at all, because it's very fast and it's very short. So the quality side was a very important part. The next section that came on, EH stands for Environmental Health and Safety. This is your guy that's in charge of all safety in the plant. And every time we make a change to anything in the plant, I don't care if it's a 3/8 inch piece of pipe up to any pump, anything, you have to document that change on your P&IDs to do that. So how do we work that? So we took their paper form. What's the negative thing about a paper form when you're doing something like this? You have 8 approvers that have to approve it. So what's the negative thing doing it by hand? It sits in somebody's inbox. Something else gets put on top of it. And eventually, they don't even know it's on, you know, that it's in their inbox. So again, by using Adept system, we took in and used we created a template for it on that. So when we came through here, again, we still are under the same thing for aerospace, but you can't really see it, but anytime you make a change and you make a drawing, what the auditor is looking for is if it's Rev 3, it better be Rev 3 on the drawing to capture that change that you had. So going through that process, anytime we have a change, we have a workflow. You can't this is the actual workflow itself. It starts out where you're going to create the document. So we use the new feature that's built in Adept, so it creates the document, automatically has the numbering sequence system, so we don't have to keep up with that. It automatically does that. And then you fill out the form, you sign it into Adept, and at that point, once you approve it, it goes into the workflow. It's a 7-step workflow, so it just goes through there for each person. But most important part is the manager approval. We have managers in all different areas of the plant. They have to sign off or have to approve it first. Once it gets approved, they make the change. Once they make the change, then it comes back to, I'm step 6, it's a document update. I'm also the CADD manager, so we have to make all the changes in it. We have to rev it. We have to make sure the date that we have that revision is going to be on the drawing itself and the form. So again, by using the workflow, it guarantees all that. We also, when they first brought the forms out, was that Rev 16, 2016, when you started doing documents, drag and drop? Incredible, great feature, drag and drop. So we created the form where we can do an MOC status and step report, do this every week so they can see what step the MOC process is in. So it's a great feature and a lot of time saver. So all the different groups, we finally came into about 2010, 2011, all the groups were totally in. And we also have a sister company called Zoltech. They actually have a company in Hungary, companies in Mexico, manufacturing, and one in St. Louis area. They purchased over 250 seats. They're just now starting to implement it. They have one administrator, but they also have 5 administrators in all the different plants that they have. So I've been helping them along a little bit to make them a little bit more efficient to get there. And one thing we want to talk about was our future. So we are in the process of putting Wi-Fi in our entire plant. And we've already practiced, had some sessions on practicing, where right now, when somebody in maintenance or anybody wants a drawing, we have to print it out. The future, what we're working towards now is with the tablets and the systems that are coming online with Synergist, they will be able to take a tablet up into wherever they're located. So let's just say it's in an electrical room, and they want a particular, for a particular MCC. Well, now they just type it in for the search, and lo and behold, the drawing comes up on there, so we've eliminated the paper altogether, and they can use the red line function to go ahead and red line it, bring it back, and we can make the changes. So it's a very exciting thing that we're wanting to get to, and this is just some examples of how we brought it in as a company. We're very pleased with it. And I wanted to show this slide as the final slide, because these are all the people that have helped us from Synergist to be, to do a great job. And one thing, when I was talking to Scott last night, I said a word that they're like family, and he said, well, gosh, that's just like what you were going to talk about. But they are like family, and like for Janet, for Patty, Patty was my very first support person, and she didn't hold my hand literally, but she held my hand. We became friends on Facebook. And it's just everybody that we have had a chance to be with in the Synergist family. It's everybody. Lynn last week did a miracle for us, updating to 2018, so we could be able to do that. But each one of these persons we've had a personal experience to that, and it's like you want to appreciate, especially in tech support. Gosh, they are the best tech. When I've worked at Intergraph, so we had a great tech support there, but I can guarantee this, as far as I'm concerned, Synergist has the best tech support I have ever been associated with, because they care. For us, they were very fast, very responsive. So I can't thank them enough to do that for us to help them there. And I know we're running short on time, and I talked fast. But I appreciate the time to come up here, and if you have any questions on how we actually implemented all this, like I said, it's just a process that you have to get into. I've met some people that are here getting ready to purchase it, so how do you get all that information in there? So we've had a good experience to do that, and I do appreciate the time. Thanks, Scott.
Phil, thank you so much. Wow, awesome. So great to hear from our customers. This is what makes this event so special for us. Hopefully you guys are finding as much value as we are. So we will make sure that you have an hour for lunch. We have one more little piece before lunch, fun trivia opportunity to win $20 gift cards and get more raffles into that final drawing. So I'm going to turn it over to Patty Hubach to take us through Cahoots.